Hello everyone, and welcome to my YNR official 24 channel. Victoria's War, Sienna Spies. Nick Solution. This is about Victoria Newman going to war. Victoria Newman is getting ready for a fight. Sienna Bacall hears something she should not have heard. Nick Newman has a plan to deal with Matt Clark. Victoria Newman's war is what this is about. Let's talk about Kane Ashby and Phyllis Summers. Kane Ashby is talking to Phyllis Summers in the office. Kane Ashby tells Phyllis Summers what they need to do. The boss says they already have control of Newman Enterprises and the companies that work for it. Then, he says they just need to take over the company now. Something stops Kane and Phyllis from talking. Victoria bursts in. She is really mad. She says they will have to kill her before she lets them take control. Over at Sharon Newman's house, Nick and Noah Newman are talking about the problem they have. They found a guy in the trunk of a car. Nick made a deal with Jack Abbott and his son Kyle Abbott. Nick thought that Jack Abbott would not let this guy Matt go because Jack Abbott is a person. Now Nick has Matt locked in the trunk of his car. So Nick runs into Noah. There is a clip that shows Nick trying to calm his son down. He wants Noah to stop worrying. Noah is really upset. He says to his dad, "Matt Clark is unconscious in the trunk of your car. I have to worry about this." The Young and the Restless spoilers for the week of January 19th say that Nick tells Noah that Matt Clark has to disappear. Nick wants Matt Clark to be gone. Then Nick says nobody can change his mind. This is probably the secret he is keeping from Sharon. Nick thinks Matt has to go, but killing him would be too simple. Maybe Nick will try to keep Matt captive like Victor Newman did with Jordan. I think Nick is not doing well. He has a crazy look in his eyes. Nick and his son Noah are not by themselves though. Sienna is listening to them from close by. Now, what will she do with the information? Billy Abbott's defense. As for Jack, he has a confrontation with Billy Abbott. The younger man says he's not taking advantage of anyone. However, Jack sees the situation totally differently. Victoria Newman eventually says enough and pulls the curtain back on Sienna's precisely constructed web of deception, setting off an explosive chain response that no bone. Not Victor, not Nikki, not indeed the ever-calculating Adam, could have completely anticipated, because for weeks Sienna had played the part of the quiet supporter with agitating perfection, presenting herself as a composed, intelligent woman with just enough vulnerability to disarm dubitation. Slipping seamlessly into Newman route under the guise of professional necessity and particular reinvention, but Victoria, stoned by times of treason, boardroom warfare, and family manipulation, had felt that familiar bite in her chine, the instinct that whispers peril long before evidence emerges, and from the veritably first moment Sienna crossed her path, Victoria tasted commodity was out. Commodity rehearsed in the pauses between words, and the way Sienna's eyes tracked every discussion like a chessboard, and while others dismissed Victoria's enterprises as paranoia born from stress and once trauma, Victoria still began assembling the mystification, pulling vestments others didn't indeed realize were loose, reconsidering fiscal records that didn't align, phone logs that suggested a burner bias, and timelines that bent just a little too excessively. All while Sienna continued to bed herself deeper into Newman Enterprises, earning Victor's grasping respect and Nikki's conservative blessing, a feat that alone should have set off admonitions, because anyone who could charm Victor Newman without a retired docket was either a phenomenon or a imminence, and as Victoria dug deeper, she uncovered a trail leading far beyond Genoa City, a trail soaked in aliases, shell companies, and a history that Sienna had surgically cancelled, including a name that had formerly been associated with a ruinous commercial takedown times agone. One that nearly destroyed a rival empire and left several important players ruined, a name Sienna had buried but no way completely escaped, and the consummation hit Victoria like a blast. Sienna wasn't just lying about her history. She was living a taradiddle, one precisely finagled to insinuate the Newmans from the inside, and rather than defy Sienna intimately, because Victoria knew better than to cock her hand, she orchestrated the unmasking with ruthless perfection, choosing the one moment and place that would ensure maximum exposure and no room for escape. A high-profile Newman Enterprises strategy meeting attended by Victor, Nikki, Nick, Adam, and several crucial directors, a room thick with pressure indeed before Victoria arrived, fortified not with allegations, but with irrefragable evidence, and as the meeting unfolded, Victoria calmly diverted the docket, her voice steady but edged with sword, projecting documents onto the screen that at first appeared to be routine reports until names, dates, and prints began to surface, causing murmurs to ripple through the room, and Sienna's countenance, formerly indefectible, began to fracture in micro-expressions she couldn't control, a tightening of the jaw, a flicker of fear in her eyes, as Victoria laid out the verity piece by piece, revealing Sienna's real name, her true history, and her retired connections to individualities who had sworn revenge against the Newmans. And when Victor demanded an explanation, his voice cold with subdued fury, Sienna tried to pivot, to spin a narrative of survival and reinvention, averring that her once no longer defined her, but Victoria was grim, exposing translated dispatches, fiscal transfers, and substantiation that Sienna had been laboriously feeding information to an unknown third party, turning the room into a pressure cooker of unbelief and treason. With Nick stunned, Nikki devastated, and Adam visibly torn between admiration for Victoria's brilliance and dread over what this disclosure could mean, and also came the final blow. Victoria revealed that Sienna's wind-up wasn't simply commercial sabotage but particular vengeance, embedded in a long, buried feud tied to opinions Victor had made times before, opinions that had destroyed lives without an alternate study, and in that moment, the verity landed with brutal clarity. Sienna hadn't sneaked the Newmans for plutocrat or power alone, but to strike them from within, to make them feel the same helplessness she formerly endured, and as security attended Sienna out amid her furious demurs and chilling warnings that this wasn't over, the fate was immediate and ruinous, because unmasking Sienna didn't just neutralize a trouble, it cracked open old injuries and reignited undetermined guilt, forcing Victor to defy the collateral damage of his once ruthlessness, forcing Nikki to question her trust in those closest to her, and forcing the entire Newman family to reckon with how vulnerable they truly are, indeed at the top. And while Victoria stood altitudinous, outwardly smooth, the weight of what she'd done settled heavily on her shoulders, because exposing Sienna also meant admitting that the Newmans' adversaries are frequently born from their own conduct, and as whispers spread through Genoa City and alliances begin to shift, one thing becomes terrifyingly clear: Victoria Newman didn't just unmask Sienna. She exposed a reckoning that's been a long time coming, and in the fate of no further lying. The question isn't whether the Newmans will survive this rearmost storm, but how important of their conglomerate and their humanity will be left standing when the dust eventually settles. And as the dust from Sienna's explosive unmasking begins to settle, the true consequences of Victoria's bold move only grow more portentous, because in Genoa City, exposures no way and fairly they echo, change, and return with sharper teeth, and nearly incontinently after Sienna is attended out of Newman Enterprises under tight security, the silence she leaves before is more blaring than her falsehoods ever were, a silence heavy with implied questions and stewing blame, as Victor Newman stands rigid at the head of the table, his fabulous confidence fractured just enough to reveal the dangerous soul-searching beneath, because Victoria's substantiation didn't simply expose and pretend her, it dragged Victor's once sins into the enduring light, reminding everyone in that room that the Newman conglomerate has always been erected on decisive palms that frequently left desolation in their wake. And while Victor would no way intimately admit guilt, the tight grip of his jaw and the way his aspect avoids Nikki's tells a different story, one of a man forced to defy the possibility that his ruthless choices created the very adversary who nearly destroyed his family from within, and Nikki, shaken to her core, struggles to attune the woman she befriended with the mastermind of treason she no way saw coming, replaying every discussion, every participated moment, wondering how she missed the warning signs, and Nick, torn between wrathfulness and unbelief, begins to question how numerous further secrets are lurking in the murk of Newman Enterprises, how numerous further trusted abettors are wearing masks of convenience, while Adam, ever the stranger looking in, feels a dangerous blend of exculpation and dread, because part of him understands Sienna's rage each too well, understands what it feels like to be contributory damage in Victor Newman's grim pursuit of power. And that understanding frightens him, because it blurs the line between adversary and glass, and as the family fractures under the weight of the Verity, Victoria becomes both idol and lightning rod, praised for her brilliance yet still begrudged for forcing everyone to face uncomfortable realities they would rather bury, and indeed as she reassures herself that she did what had to be done, the emotional cost begins to surface in insomniac nights and grim what-ifs, because exposing Sienna doesn't abolish the fact that Sienna got as far as she did, that she sneaked their inner circle with intimidating ease, and that consummation gnaws at Victoria's sense of control, pushing her to strain her grip on the company and her family, determined to ensure that no bone ever blindsides the Newmans like that again. Yet away in Genoa City, Sienna's junking sparks a different kind of fire, because secrets have a way of surviving their keepers, and whispers begin to circulate that Sienna wasn't acting alone, that the mysterious third-party Victoria linked is still veritably important in play, watching, staying, recalibrating. And the idea that Sienna was simply one piece in a larger vendetta sends chills through indeed Victor's hardened defenses, egging him to still rally his own countermeasures, calling in favors, continuing old lines, and preparing for a war he allowed he'd formerly won times agone. While Victoria, refusing to be sidelined, pushes deeper into the disquisition, determined to uncover every remaining thread of Sienna's network, indeed if it means exhuming further painful trueness about her father's history, and as father and son circle each other with collective respect and implied pressure, the power dynamics within the Newman family subtly shift. Because Victor can no longer dismiss Victoria as simply his successor. In training, she has proven herself as his equal, able of striking with the same advised ferocity he formerly applied alone, and that consummation both impresses and unsettles him, because conglomerates infrequently survive two lords, and amid this internal reckoning, the emotional fallout ripples outward, impacting connections across Genoa City, as trust becomes a rare commodity and long-standing alliances begin to fray. With Nicky leaning on Jack Abbott for perspective, inadvertently continuing old injuries and stirring dangerous nostalgia, while Nick finds himself questioning his own judgment in business and love, wondering if his desire to see the stylish in people has made him eyeless to their worst intentions, and Adam, decreasingly insulated, begins to sweat that if Sienna's story comes completely to light, it'll validate everything he's ever indicted Victor of being, forcing him to choose between fidelity to his family and fidelity to the Verity. A choice that has no way ended well for anyone involved, and, in the murk, Sienna herself refuses to fade still into disgrace, because stripped of her alias and position, she embraces her part as catalyst rather than casualty, covenanting that Victoria's triumph will be short-lived, that the Newmans' reckoning is far from over, and that unmasking her was only the morning, and as she plots her coming move, fueled by bitterness and a crooked sense of justice, the stage is set for an indeed darker battle, one that will test not just the strength of the Newman conglomerate, but the moral foundation it stands on, because in the fate of no further lying, Genoa City is left reeling from a simple, ruinous verity. When masks fall, they do'n't just reveal faces, they reveal consequences, and Victoria Newman, having pulled the thread that unraveled Sienna's falsehoods, may soon discover that some trueness, formerly exposed, demand a price far lesser than palm. Victoria Newman is going to show her side. She will have a warning that says body, which means things are going to get really bad. Victoria Newman will let her Newman side come out and fight back. Now that people are attacking Newman Enterprises, Victoria Newman knows she has to get tough and fight for real to stop all the things that are happening. Victor Newman is really upset about all of this because he has seen what the AI program can do, and it scares him. Victoria Newman is ready to fight back. She will not let anyone hurt Newman Enterprises. The company Arabesque was destroyed fast, so Victor has already accepted that they may have to start selling parts of Newman. This has to be really hard for Victoria to see Victor so upset. Victor is usually very prepared, knows what to do, but he did not see all these problems coming from Kane Ashby and Phyllis Summers. Victor and Nick Newman have already warned Kane during their visits to his train, and arabesque is still a concern for Victor and Newman. Victor is trying to figure out what to do about arabesque and Newman. The young and the restless spoilers say that Victoria will be the one to burst in and cause a scene during the week of January 19th to 23rd. Kane is going to be very confident when he talks to Phyllis. She will really enjoy their conversation because they are working together to take over the company. Kane will talk about how he thinks Newman Enterprises and the companies it owns are already theirs. Then he will say that they should just go ahead with their plan to take over the company, like removing a bandage. The young and the restless spoilers are saying that Kane and Phyllis are getting ready to make their move and take over Newman Enterprises. When the time comes, Victoria will walk in, say that the thing will happen when she is dead. Victoria will make it very clear that she is serious. She would rather have something bad happen to her than let Kane get what he wants. Victoria and Phyllis will have a fight because Phyllis will rub it in Victoria's face that she won Kane over. Victoria will try to make Phyllis angry by asking if Kane is really committed to Phyllis or if he will cheat on her. Victoria will keep saying that Kane might cheat on Phyllis. Whatever the case, Victoria will warn Kane and Phyllis that the Newmans are going to come roaring back. Victor never loses for very long, so Victoria may remind Kane and Phyllis of that soon enough. Victoria will embrace her fierce Newman roots during this confrontation and may admit she'll take great pleasure in the revenge plot that's brewing. Victoria's War, Sienna Intelligencers, Nick's result. The young and the restless explodes with pressure as Genoa City becomes a battleground where fidelity is currency, secrets are munitions, and every smile hides a cutter. Because Victoria Newman is no longer playing defense, she's waging an each-out war, a calculated, ruthless crusade to secure her heritage and cover Newman Enterprises at any cost. Indeed, if it means burning islands she formerly swore she'd no way cross. And it all begins with the cold consummation that she's girdled by adversaries wearing familiar faces, mates who nod in boardrooms, but brute treason in the murk, forcing Victoria to harden her heart and edge her instincts as she launches covert pushes designed to outflank rivals before they indeed realize they're under attack. Yet just as Victoria believes she has the upper hand, a new variable slithers into the equation in the form of Sienna, a name spoken vocally but loaded with peril, a woman whose history is a maze of half, trueness and missing pieces, whose unforeseen propinquity to the Newman inner circle raises admonitions that indeed Victor California and ignore, because Sienna isn't just watching, she's espionage, absorbing every nuance, every argument, every crack in the Newman armor, reporting back to forces that thrive on chaos, and while Victoria senses commodity out, she and go to expose Sienna without evidence, knowing that an unseasonable strike could make her look paranoid and weaken her authority at the exact moment. She needs unwavering confidence, so she plays along, smiles thinly, invites Sienna closer, turning the game into a deadly cotillion of observation and counter-observation where one wrong step could bring everything. Meanwhile, Nick Newman finds himself trapped between his family's raising war and his own moral compass, watching Victoria come more like Victor with each decisive move, and while part of him admires her strength, another part fears what this metamorphosis will eventually bring her. Because Nick has seen this movie before, he's lived the fate of Victor's wars, the emotional fallout, the collateral damage that no way makes captions, and as pressures rise, Nick becomes the reticent middleman, the voice of reason, no bone asked for but desperately needs. Yet indeed he struggles to find solid ground as Sienna's presence begins to ripple through Genoa City, subtly manipulating exchanges, nudging alliances, wooing just enough information to hold Newman against Newman, Abbott against Newman, and Musketeers against suckers, creating a pressure cooker that threatens to explode. And it's in this unpredictable atmosphere that Nick stumbles upon commodity unanticipated, a result not born from brute force or commercial intimidation, but from empathy, strategy, and an understanding of mortal weakness that only someone who has walked down from power can truly grasp, because Nick realizes that Victoria's war can't be won by crushing adversaries alone. It must be won by exposing the verity, disarming deception, and offering a path forward that doesn't leave everyone emotionally void. So Nick still begins his own disquisition, retracing Sienna's way, connecting blotches others have overlooked, discovering ties that stretch beyond Genoa City and into old vendettas that should have stayed buried. And as he digs deeper, the picture becomes clearer and further intimidating. Sienna isn't acting alone. She's part of a larger scheme designed to destabilize Newman Enterprises.